time because they were at the bridge this morning early, and they threw you in there for a little snippet.
It's recording. Interesting.
So they put you in there for a little snippet. But it looked good. The what? Here comes Fox 17 is here too.
Like they do with the footballs. And the coaches are going,
Somebody get me my makeup, please. Get the makeup.
getting chairs.
I saw you pushing. I saw you pushing.
Serving our constituency.
Yeah, I know. Perfect. Me and you only got 2 more meetings. You better do it all right.
Right. You don't want to appear to be like you're, slacking off.
Okay.
You see the photos of the bridge. Warren or whatever that was money for that the GOP had in the budget. Is it really? It's just frightful.
My neighbor. Be willing to put a sign in his yard.
They're ready for this.
Do you have yard
We got it
signs?
right.
Yeah, I can ask him.
I don't. I saw her on TV this morning. She was shivering
She should be on
like
TV.
a leaf in the wind.
I had campaign from 10 to 5:15, and then they got me. So no glasses, no makeup, no nothing.
Yeah, it looked like it's cold. She's always cold. She's always cold. Good to it. Yep.
I'd like to call Ferrisburg City Council meeting to order tonight, October 7, 2019. Roll call, please.
Mayor Hop,
Here.
Councilmember Kennedy,
Here.
Councilmember DeWitt,
Here.
Councilmember Twa,
Here.
Councilmember O'Donnell,
Here.
Councilmember Carlson,
Here.
Councilmember Blees.
Present.
At this time, I'd like you to stand for invocation given by Mayor Hop, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Dear Heavenly Father, please be with us this evening as we gather together to conduct matters of business. Guide our hearts and our minds in spirit of fairness, right thought and speech. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities so that our affairs may reach a successful conclusion. Please continue to protect our men and women in uniform and keep them safe from harm. We pray this in your holy name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time on the agenda is time for public comments to be given brief comments or questions to City Council. Time for public comments will be given when an agenda item is discussed. If you have a comment or question, please raise your hand to be recognized by the mayor. After being recognized by the mayor, please stand, give your name and address for the record, proceed with your comment or question. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Any comments? Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Stephanie Raleigh, 19145 Maiden Lane. Wanted to just take this opportunity to introduce myself and let you know that I'm going to be running as a write-in candidate for the city council seat on the November 5th election. Over the past many years, or few years at least, I've been increasingly involved in the city of Ferrisburg, and currently I'm a member of the Recreation Commission. I am on the board of directors of the Grand Haven Beach Association. I'm treasurer secretary of the Somerset Association. I've also participated in different events in the city, including the Tree City tree planting event with Relief Michigan. I've attended the 4th of July Mayor's Breakfast and other events through the day, Walk for Warmth with Ottawa County and the Community Action Agency, and most recently been involved with the Fire Barn Playscape build and raising the money for that initiative. I've also participated in city discussions, some of the leading issues with the city, the short-term rentals for one, Ferrysburg Nature Preserve. Also participated in the ambulance agreement, or the City of Ferrysburg ambulance agreement, and also the master plan. I'm here tonight to, as you all are, to listen in on the Smiths Bridge discussion and continue monitoring and, I guess, listening to the issues that all of you have. My background, just quickly, I was born in Grand Rapids. I attended East Grand Rapids and Forest Hill school districts, graduated from Hillsdale College with a BA in business administration, and then I pursued a career in emergency medical services. I retired from the city of Toronto in 2016 to move back here to be with family and get involved in the local community. My work experience, like I said, primarily in Canada, returned to the States in May of this year, changed my status to American from a Canadian permanent resident. In my 23-year career, I was a commander of Toronto Paramedic Services, which is a division of the City of Toronto, so I had a lot of involvement with the city and understand how cities operate and city politics. I was the manager of a district where, with a $25 million budget, 220 paramedics and 11 supervisors underneath me. I worked with 8 different counselors within the city. The city was broken up into wards, so again, I just want to reinforce my involvement with city and understanding the city dynamics. Also, being a media spokesperson for the city, I'm comfortable in front of the public, in front of the camera, and talking to people. My goals, as you know, I make an effort to become part of the city council. I want to remain objective, reasonable, and responsible on all issues, and when I speak to all the residents. Listen and respect and represent all the residents, preserve our shoreline parks and dune areas, and maintain our small town presence. That, coming from living in the city of Toronto, is really important to me. Pursue county, state, and federal funding opportunities to minimize our tax increases. I think we pay enough taxes already. Hopefully we can keep them mitigated, even with different expenses that we're starting to face. I want to work with the City of Ferrysburg, the mayor, other council members, and the city manager to achieve our strategic goals. I think my 3 minutes is about up, so I want to encourage all of you to get out and vote, and at the end of the day, we have a good, robust conversation around issues like Smiths Bridge. Thank you.
So thank you for your help this past week on the community build. It does, it does. Okay. Any additional public comments? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Before we move on to the consent agenda for approval, we need to add item 7A1. Commissioner Roger Bergman will be doing a presentation prior to Fleece and Vandenbrink's presentation to the council regarding Smiths Bridge. So if you can add that into your agenda. Also, there's an agenda correction on 7C. The date for the next regular work session should read October 21, not September 16. Okay. So item number 6, consideration of approval of consent agenda. A, approve the September 16, 2019 City Council meeting minutes as printed. B, approve a bid from Toad's Tree Service for $11,200 for tree removals. C, adopt a resolution to sell a section of the land with approximately 128 feet of street frontage on Carmen Drive and located between parcel number 700316-179-019 and 70-03-16326-003.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Support.
Okay, all those in favor stating aye?
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Moving down to new business. Commissioner Jonas.
Bergman.
Bergman.
I'm looking right at him. The two Rogers, I apologize, the two Rogers are sitting next to each other. Okay,
All right. Here's the
I
pen.
apologize for that, Mr. Bergman.
It's all right. There are two Rogers in the front row. So I have a video that I'm going to let Craig run first, or somebody's going to run it for me first, and then I'll come back. Okay, so we can watch this first. the nice thing about giving a silent presentation like this is you can hear a pin drop. It was pretty quiet in here, was it? You know, it is my honor and privilege to be able to serve you all and you all as your representative on this commission. Ottawa County is looked upon by state officials and other commissioners throughout the state of Michigan as the best run county in the state of Michigan, and it is. We are envied nationally as well. When we go to the National Organization of Counties, they often refer to Ottawa County in Michigan as one of the best run counties in the country. So it's an honor for me to be there. You know, we're always looking for ways to do things better. You know, the parks that we have, and thanks to, you know, Roger here, the other Roger in the front row, you know, and the dedication that he, along with a lot of other people, have put into the parks over the last, is it 20 years? 13 years, yeah. And, you know, the parks, if you haven't visited some of our parks, you need to just get outdoors. And the one that they were showing, Grand Ravines out by Grand Valley, is just awesome. That bridge and the eagle that you can see there. Of course, you have your own eagle, not too far from here, but it's a beautiful thing. Another thing that I just wanted to highlight is that you know, the county is working on diversity and what that means, what that looks like in a government situation. And so we have a diversity forum that's coming up on November 15th. And my encouragement is that I would like to see at least a couple of your council members and perhaps Craig as well. I'm going to leave one of these forms here for Craig. And if I could encourage a couple of you to attend, this is for government leadership, and it's designed to help us get to the point where we learn how to involve diversity in our thinking, forward thinking. So I'm going to give this to Craig. I represent, and I'm going to encourage a couple of people for every one of those municipalities. One of the things I also appreciate the fact that you all came up with a resolution supporting stopping the dredging on the Grand River. I was able to get resolutions from not only our 5 municipalities, but also from the West Michigan Shoreline Regional Development Commission. It's the policy committee that I'm the chair of, and I understand that there may be some disinformation that's been passed out regarding Ferrisburg's participation in our MPO, which is the West Michigan Shoreline. I want to make sure I get it right. West Michigan Shoreline, because we always call it Wimserdick, right? Wimserdick. It's West Michigan Shoreline Regional Development Commission. And what we are in charge of is allocating funds, state funds, for our roads and transportation system. So our MAX or our Harbor Transit, which is Muskegon County and then also Northwest Ottawa County. So we have had either Pat or Rebecca at our policy committee meetings, and I know that Craig has been at all the technical committee meetings, and representation from Ferrisburg has been very good. So I appreciate that, and I think the one thing that we have found is that I remember not that long ago, we went to them maybe a year ago and asked about funding for Smith's Bridge, and found out that we're in line with about 354 other bridges in the state of Michigan that are not part of the federal or state trunk line that are in disrepair also. And so the dollars And then, you know, when I discovered how many dollars our MPO has, if we took dollars for the Smiths Bridge, there wouldn't be any money left for anything else in Muskegon County or Ottawa County for several years. So it's not like the MPO has any money to use. We also, Craig and I went to talked to Bill Heisinga's office. This was probably 3 years ago, to talk about getting funding for the Ferrysburg Bridge, and we're unsuccessful in that. And now it's kind of disappointing that we found out that there was funding and now it's not there. So anyway, enough said. I'm just like I said, I'm proud to serve you all. If you have any questions or any concerns or thoughts, please give me a call. If you have any questions of me now, I'll take.
Just a couple thank yous. Thank you for coming out tonight and presenting this, because Ottawa County is, I believe, or I have been told, the fastest growing county in the state.
Yes.
And it's reflective in the school districts also. As being a teacher, I see that waiting list at school where I teach. Also, but I want to thank you too for revisiting the housing committee. Ottawa County, it had been kind of stagnant for a while.
Right.
Now they're in the process of it getting up and running, which would assist senior living, senior housing, and low-income housing, whether employment or just others that are in need of that type of housing. But it's really critical because I do chair 4 Points, the Center for Successful Aging. And so I know that Attorney Reinsma had spoken.
Just appointed him, and also one other person from this area. So we have 2 people from Northwest Ottawa County.
So thank you very much for revisiting that.
Yeah.
It means a lot. So, any other questions or concerns for Commissioner Bergen?
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Red.
This time we'll move down to the presentation from Fleece and Vandenbrink regarding Smith's Bridge. But before we begin, is there public comments that people would like to share at this time before the presentation begins? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We'll go this one first. Please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Jacob Sturley, 16269 Suffolk Drive. Per the agenda, Fleece and Vandenbrink is going to be presenting their findings shortly here. I'd like to ask that the mayor and city council be thoughtful listeners and critical thinkers when listening to the engineers from Fleece and Vandenbrink tonight. They are expert engineers, and their opinions and recommendations should be considered carefully. During the public forum, when they presented their findings to the public, they suggested that they could perform further testing that would provide more information that could lead to the reopening and or the repair of Smith's Bridge at a fraction of the cost to replace the bridge. The public is anxious for some progress to be made on Smith's Bridge, and further testing is the next step to finding a solution. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Yes, sir.
Madam Mayor and other esteemed colleagues and city council members, my name is Jerry Sias. I reside at 325 Beach Street, Spring Lake, Michigan. And the reason I'm here tonight is not to give my bio, but I also am a write-in candidate for the city council seat. The reason I'm here is to discuss matters of the city. I'm a write-in candidate and did not apply
Mr.
earlier.
Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
We're taking public comments right now regarding the presentation of Smith's Bridge.
I'm getting there, ma'am. I'm getting there.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah. That's what I'm here to discuss as well.
Perfect,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, I'm a write-in candidate for Ferrysburg City Council. I'm not here to give, you got me off track a little bit. The reason I'm a write-in candidate and did not apply earlier to get my name on the ballot is because after 2 years of running for state representative, I needed a break from politics. And just when I thought I was out, you pulled me back in. I could no longer sit idly by and watch what's going on over our bridge issue. Our city council is not listening to reason or their constituents. Fix the bridge, and I want to emphasize fix, not replace. Continue testing immediately, especially to establish weight limits so cars and light trucks can cross. This would alleviate a lot of tension and anxiety in our citizens. If I or any of us thought we could depend on the state for $10 to $13 million to replace our whole bridge, none of us would be here tonight. There would be peace on our peninsula. But we all know there's political gridlock in Michigan, and there will be for some time to come. We do not have the benefit of waiting. We need solutions now. I hope you listen to your constituents tonight. They have committed their time, sweat, and money to present you with viable and economical solutions. They did your job. They give the citizens of Ferrisburg options which you were unwilling or unable to do. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Hello, John Sanders, owner of the Reef Party Store at 17176 West Spring Lake Road. My wife and I bought the Reef in the spring of 2010. It was bankrupt and had been vacant for 10 months. It's not easy running a business. There are several risks everyone has to face running a business: keeping ahead of the competition, maneuvering through government regulation, changing laws, license permits, labor, and so on. Since we bought the Reef, we've had increasing sales every year until this year. One risk we did not figure into, and maybe now is a new normal, is that of a crumbling infrastructure. We'll make it in the short run. I'm not so certain about the long run. That depends on what happens with the bridge. We may find the Reef vacant once again as it was when we bought it. But I don't want to make this all about me. In the past and currently, we've had employed single moms, retirees, stay-at-home moms wanting a valid reason to get out of the house for some social interaction and make a few extra bucks. We've hired college students, people starting in their careers. This is also about the many people who have come into the store, and they start to reminisce and tell me with a gleam in their eye about how they used to come in the store when they were kids. Many of these people are in their 60s and 70s. They tell me about how they would get their lawn mowing money, ride their bikes down, buy their candy, go to the park, buy their fishing supplies, fish off Smith's Bridge. I want these people to have these memories for generations to come. This is also about keeping the business local. I've had my heating and cooling done by McKellips here in Ferrisburg. I have my electrical work done by Mike Walker and his business. I have a local guy plow my parking lot. I buy firewood, I sell at the store, and for my personal use from a local guy. I bought my last two vehicles from a Ferrisburg resident who owned the dealership. There are others as well. Will these businesses go under if the Reef goes under? No, probably not. But if the Reef goes under and other businesses start to go under, we could see a domino effect here, and it will be affecting these other businesses in the future. In conclusion, I want to say that as a kid, I was a Boy Scout, and I am an Eagle Scout. I learned a lot of valuable lessons from these experiences. One of the things I learned is from a simple motto of be prepared. I tried to keep that in mind in my daily life. Unfortunately, I was not prepared to be dealing with the closing of the bridge. I've been more reactive than proactive, which is not the way it should be. I hope our city leaders will be prepared to make the right decision to benefit our whole community, which are the people that elected you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Debbie Murdoch, 16063 Lake Point Drive. I've lived here in Ferrisburg for over 24 years, and I've loved it. It's a small town feel of friendly people and the beautiful lake, but I have not loved the sudden closing of Smith's Bridge without any warning, and the resistance of City's Council to consider other options, to consider further testing to possibly repair and reopen the bridge. The bridge is crucial for the residents of Ferrisburg and the surrounding areas. I beg that Council pays for further testing of the bridge and use the bridge funds already in your hands. I personally prefer the non-invasive choice for further testing. I, too, am running as a write-in candidate for City Council. I support doing everything possible to get our bridge repaired and reopened as soon as possible. Thank you.
I would prefer them before. Thank you. Go ahead. Hold on, Mr. Jonas. I have Mr. Ross behind you. Go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Andrew Ross, 16960 Cecilia Lane, Ferrysburg Heights. Council has questioned why people would expect that we would do some more investigating. And because 13 million has a lot of zeros, I thought we'd put it into some kind of perspective. So when we look at a potentially $13 million new bridge, and we're talking about up to $10,000 to test and see if we can repair it, I thought, well, maybe if we looked at that like a $35,000 new car. So if a mechanic said to me, hey, you need to replace your car before I spent $35,000, would I spend 10,000 of 13 million is 7/100%. So that would be like spending $26.92 to find out if that car could be repaired. I think that's something that we can understand why folks would want you to consider. If we wanted to do the repair, it's $750,000 to say $1 million. So if you put that into perspective of a $35,000 car, potentially $2,019 to $2,692 to keep your car running. So again, I think I can understand why the general public would say, hey, maybe that's something that we should look at. We can probably all agree about that. This part's probably not going to get so much agreement from the folks here, but I think it's important that we look at it. I don't think council has been negligent in exploring the possibilities for repairing or replacing the bridge. But I think that and I said this at the prior two meetings, I believe the annual Ferrysburg budget is $1.7 million. Is that correct, Mr. Bessinger? Close. So again, going back to that $35,000 car, if we had an average annual income of $50,000 in the Ottawa County area, that $13 million bridge on a $1.7 million annual budget would equate to a $380,000 car to a family with a $50,000 budget. It's like owning a Ferrari. That same 7.7% repair that was $2,700 to keep my car running, which I might consider doing, would be a $29,000 repair to keep a Ferrari on the road. Now, if you had a rich uncle, Ottawa County, that said, you know what, I'm done driving this Ferrari. Andrew, why don't you take this? I would take it. I would drive the hell out of it. But when it came time to pay a $29,000 repair bill to keep driving it, I would probably spend the $850,000 to remove that bridge and sell that car. I know everybody loves a bridge. I love it. I live right next door to it. It's been a major inconvenience. But as a community with 3,000 residents, it's something that we just can't afford. So I would like to encourage people to think about the perspective of the dollars involved and consider removal of the bridge as a viable option. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jonas.
I'm too old to be a write-in candidate for anything, so, but I have served the 20 years Roger referring to as 20 years on the Planning Commission here in Ferrysburg.
For the record, can you please state your name and address, please?
Excuse me, Roger Jonas, 16038 Harbor Point Drive, 49456. Yeah, I've lived in Ferrysburg for 39 years, and I married a girl, local girl, in 1965. So I remember that bridge, the bridge, that Smith's Bridge before this one was built. Back when we did have cars that ran on gasoline back then. It wasn't a horse and buggy time. But anyway, a lot's happened over the years, obviously, and I just wanted to mention one thing, and that is 4 weeks from tomorrow, there'll be 2 new members on the city council, because 2 of you have opted not to run again. So therefore, there'll be at least 2 new members. I think the current city council has sat through all the expenditure reports and everything and had got a lot of knowledge that 2 new council members won't necessarily have. Therefore, I think it's incumbent upon this group of 7 to make decisions going forward, because you've got the information and the background and everything else, and not let future councils tackle it. There'll be plenty for future councils, obviously. I've also read the last 4 bridge reports very carefully. All of them are in agreement. Repairs are needed. I think we've known that. It's no big secret. But nowhere in the last 4 reports can I find any recommendation of closing the bridge. I think that came through some comments that were made verbally that kind of threw council off. And I told you before, and I'll say it again, I'm not going to second guess your decision to close it. That I wasn't elected to make that decision. But I think we have to look at a couple different things, and I'm going to recommend that Fleiss and Vandenbrink on their inspection includes separating the structural damage versus cosmetic damage. And a lot of the pictures you have of the bridge look nasty, but they're not necessarily structurally a problem. They're more cosmetic. So I think we have to separate those two and understand how that bridge is built. Therefore, expanding the inspection, in my opinion, from what they've proposed to include the piers and the understructure would do a lot to give a lot more information to council to make a better decision going forward. More information, in my opinion, gives us all better decisions to make. So I'm suggesting the structural concrete overlay as it was recommended in the last report given. That was the August 1 report. That was the one that was up to $800,000. I think if you throw in possibly the underlayment and the piers, in other words, the understructure of the box beams and the piers themselves, I think you're up to about $1 million. Of that, I think if Ferrisburg came up with $500,000 and asked for a match, your chances of a grant are a lot better when you do a 50-50 match on that. And I noticed the last time we applied for a grant, it was a 15% match by the city on a $10 million ask. That would have been $1.5 million right there. So this is a lot less doing that. But if we can get the 15 to 20 more years out of that, in my opinion, that's a pretty good return on investment. And it's something to think about, but we definitely need more information, more inspection, and I'm comfortable that these gentlemen that are going to give you a proposal, I'm not sure what's in it, have not seen it, so therefore we'll let them speak for themselves. But thank you.
Is there any other additional public comments? Anyone else wants to speak up regarding this Smiths Bridge before we go into the presentation? No? All right, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm John Moxie with Fleiss and Vandenbrink. Don DeVries is behind me there. He's really here to answer the difficult questions when they come. I'm here to kind of give you an overview of where we are today. For the faces that I don't recognize, I think a lot of you were at the public meeting last month, but for those of you that weren't there, just briefly, well, we were hired to basically do a second opinion. We retraced the steps that had been taken to this point, concluding in an inspection report. We did an inspection in August and then prepared a report and then presented that to the public last month. Most of our findings were very, very close to in line with what prior inspections had concluded. But we went a step further and didn't leave you there. We tried to come up with some alternatives, at least to help you think about other options to replacement. And so that's where I'll spend most of my time. I assume that's where most of your questions are going to be. That's the main reason we're here tonight, is really to answer questions. The other item I will highlight is we did want to at least get something in front of you in terms of what some details for a few of the options that we talked about last month would look like. It's certainly not a, this is the right way to go. This is a starting point. We can certainly add and delete and change and do whatever you feel is right. But we laid out a work plan and some fees for both the semi-destructive testing option. Basically what that involves is having the DPW strip off the asphalt wearing surface. We're thinking about 6 locations is what we have in here today. That can go up, that can go down, depending on your comfort level. And then working with a testing firm to do Swiss hammer. It's a scientific way of pounding on the concrete, basically to using calibrated equipment to try and get an understanding of what is the strength of the top surface of the concrete box beams. And then we would obviously supplement that with visual and just plain hammer testing, things that we would do on a normal inspection, but can't because we don't have access underneath the asphalt. So that's the first part. That would culminate in a report. We would be back here to present that report in the near future, and then go from there, basically. That would give us some guidance to do any number of things. Some of those are presented in the report itself, whether it's an alternate design, whether it's the bridge still needs to be closed, or whether we don't really need to do anything. The concrete looks good. We think we can open it up without issues. The second piece of that proposal we're calling funding application update. Basically take the results of whatever we find through that semi-destructive testing phase, and then let's modify at least the MDOT application that we have been submitting, the city has been submitting for several years, and maybe incorporate some of those new ideas, new concepts, depending on what direction you folks would give us. A lot of the information is the same from application to application. It's just moving it into a new application, but really the bulk of that work is coming up with a detailed cost estimate. We've thrown out some very wide ranges because we're still at a very conceptual phase. This would nail that down into what money would you actually apply for. And then illustrate that with a narrative, describe what we would actually do to the bridge so that the committee can see it and feel comfortable approving it, hopefully. In some time frame. Whether we try to submit that under the emergency application process would be one option, or we submit it next May for the regular 2020 round of applications. But the idea being, in the meantime, we would at least have some clarity on where you sit today. Right now, the main issue in front of you is we don't really know. We can't give you a recommendation on whether the bridge needs to be opened or closed because the specific area in question just isn't accessible to us as engineers, as scientists. So that's where we sit tonight. Again, we're mostly here to answer your questions, help with discussion. So I'll turn it back to you.
Statement. You have made reference a couple times, both in writing and then again tonight, in regards to the emergency funding. According to MDOT, Local Bridge Advisory Board procedures, because I've been working directly with them and will be presenting to them in Lansing near the end of the month. Their definition is an emergency is a failure of a bridge due to the act of God, vehicular collision, or as a direct result of a vehicle load that exceeded the posted and or legal bridge capacity. Failure due to deterioration over time will not be considered as an emergency.
Yeah, and I
so
actually...
please clarify that, because I know that you've spoken with Keith Cooper.
Right.
And so have I.
Yeah, and what he said is it doesn't fit within that box, but that box doesn't get used very often. It's kind of a special tool in their tool chest. And he said his description to me was there's no harm in trying. Basically, it's up to that emergency committee, which is the state level committee, to decide whether it's something they want to consider or not.
Policy and procedures and their definitions currently right now, we do not qualify for that.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just wanted
as
that
written. Again,
clarification.
it's a pretty rare thing. I think he said they've only really done the one bridge that we presented the other night.
Correct.
Is the one that's gone through that process.
Right. So that's what I wanted to put out. Before we go on to further discussion, because I had a couple more points, any questions additionally? Because I think most of us were at the presentation that they did. They had the slides and additional information's in our packet.
Yeah, I got a couple questions, John. Oh, are we not done?
He's just asking, yeah, he's just asking for questions. Go ahead, Mike.
You got a hard one?
Well, yeah, you're throwing all kinds of options at the table, which we all heard from our previous engineer. Now, as I'm looking at this, we have beams that are not supported by the substructure. The positioning pins and such what. How is going to strip the deck going to alleviate the problem of those beams?
Yeah, you have one location on one pier where there's spalling that has come down to, we call them positioning dowels, the steel pins that hold that beam in place, where it has lost some of its bearing. It still has at least 50% of that bearing. And it right now, up until earlier this year, it was carrying, a maximum load of 20 tons when it was designed for something closer to 70 to 100.
60 ton to be direct.
You have one beam out of all those beams. That's something that can be repaired. That's something that's repaired quite often to restore that bearing, we call it.
How do you propose to repair that?
That gets any more deteriorated concrete gets chipped out. They put a form up against it, and then they pour in new concrete to fill that area. With some reinforcing, there would probably be some additional reinforcing.
It's going to, then those positioning pins will be replaced?
You could replace the pins completely. Normally we wouldn't. There's some corrosion on them, but they're not doing anything but holding that beam in place, which the other two beams next to it are doing already.
Question I got is, you want to strip the surface of the road. Correct me if I'm wrong, the only way that we can have tire tracks in that road is those beams are collapsing, correct?
Is your question the only way you could have a tire failing?
No, we got ruts in that bridge. Okay, now we have a cement beam, correct, with asphalt on top. So the only way those ruts can get there is the top of that beam is failing.
I see. I'm sorry, I didn't follow your question. Two things. First, I didn't see any significant rutting, more than, normal on an asphalt wearing surface. The second one is asphalt is a flexible pavement. Asphalt moves, where it's going to move, especially when it's hot. So what you could be seeing is actually just, that top 1 to 2 inch asphalt rutting on its own, with the tops of the beams not being affected at all. I can't tell you that one way or another without seeing.
Your position is we need to strip that asphalt decking off on be the north end, where the ruts are.
Yeah, what we've suggested is rely on DPW. They've seen this, because they've done the maintenance out there. They've seen where the worst areas are. We would rely on them to point to us the worst areas, strip those off for us. Let's start there.
I understand it. This bridge construction is no longer allowed by the state of Michigan, this particular style of whatever it is, what do you call it, the box
Correct.
beams?
Yeah.
So my question is, if, I realize this, we don't know yet, but if we need to replace 2 or 3 beams, are they even available?
Oh, yes, the beams are. The style of the bridge that isn't really used anymore today is the adjacent box beams, making that your deck, and then putting asphalt over the top. That was a very popular design, especially for road commissions for a long time, but MDOT has shied away from that for a number of years, and now local agencies are completely shying away from it by and large.
So if for instance, we need to replace 2 beams, which in my mind, the only way we can have that rut is the tops and beams are corroding.
Mm-hmm.
We have to replace 2 beams. What kind of cost estimate you got?
Yeah, to replace individual beams, it's not an easy thing, but it's something that we think it falls within that general ballpark that we've presented.
Of?
The higher end option, the structural overlay, if we wanted to do that.
The million and a half?
Yeah, it would be within that $1 million type project.
$1.5 million.
I've
dealt with you engineers before. No project ever comes in on budget.
Again, what we would suggest is let's actually sit down and try and refine that after we know a little bit more. But yeah, it could be $1.5 million, depending on how many beams you'd want to replace.
Okay, so basically, we're giving you permission for a blank check.
No, we've written down exactly. This is one scenario. We've put it down. Okay. This is what.
Hey, a couple other questions. How many of these strands here in these box beams are broken before we have a structural collapse? I mean, I'm looking at pictures here. We got one with eight tensioning. What do you call them? Tensioning strands?
Pre-stressing strands.
Yeah, okay. You got another one here with 4 or 5 broke on 2 different beams, 2 different areas. You got exposed beams here. That's on span 8, beam 6W. I mean, it's not just one spot.
Yeah, there's spots everywhere, but keep in mind, those spots don't add to each other. Just because you have 2 here, 2 here, 2 here, it's really, we're looking at the worst case scenario. What is the worst beam out there is what's gonna dictate the load rating. And what the load rating told us, the load rating that we reviewed as part of the inspection work that we did, they assumed 4 broken strands, which I think the worst case that we saw out there was 2, maybe 2 more exposed. And they came up with 30 tons based on 4 broken strands. So that tells me that you've still got some room.
Question I got. What do you call the cross with the beam set on?
Pier caps?
Yeah, pier caps. As I'm looking at these pier caps, I'm not a structural engineer, but when I see 1-inch cracks in the pier cap that's holding my road up, I'm getting concerned.
Yeah.
Now you're saying, okay, we're going to throw some cosmetics at this thing, open it back up. We didn't address any problems on the pier caps and or the piling. You look at the pilings, we got cracks in the pilings, vertical cracks. We got spider cracks in 3 of them. We got actually exposed reinforcing rod on 2 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. We have delaminating cement on Pier 4S, pile 2W. I ain't sure where that is, but I mean, I'm looking at your pictures here, and you're gonna throw a deck on a bridge, throw a piece of sheet metal down or whatever you're gonna do with it and reinforce the deck. What about all the substructure problems we got?
Yeah, it's a good question. Let's start with the pier caps. The pier caps are a structural member. Basically, that is the way that loads are transmitted from the beams down to the steel piling. The pier caps, I would not call it cosmetic repairs. We would do structural repairs on the pier caps. That would be injecting cracks, replacing damaged concrete, things like that. Then the load carrying members below that, the columns, is a steel H-pile that sits inside the concrete that you're looking at. The concrete that you're looking at is just a jacket. Basically, it's there to protect that steel pile that's doing the work.
Correct. It's obviously getting water in there and rusting that pier cap or that pile at the water level. Below the surface, it doesn't matter. But at the water level or above, you're getting oxygen in there and you're creating a rust problem. Underwater, it doesn't matter. Correct?
Correct. But it needs oxygen to happen. So things that are permanently underwater generally don't rust very quickly, if at all.
Well, this is 10 foot above water, the one I'm looking at.
Up above water, I'd agree with you. The thing is, when steel corrodes, it expands dramatically. You've probably seen that, you know, on your car, basically. That sheet metal that was an 1/8 inch thick, when it corrodes, it triples in width. So what that does when that steel is corroding significantly inside there is it pops off the concrete. What we haven't seen that type of damage on those jackets. That would suggest there's something structural going on with the steel piles.
So what you're saying is the H piles inside this jacket don't mean nothing then?
No, it doesn't. It's not that it doesn't mean nothing. What it's doing is it's protecting the piles from things like ice, boat traffic, from the elements. But it's not intentional carrying the load down to the floor, down to the bottom of the bayou.
Several of these pier jackets, we've sleeved them in the past. We've done something to them. I can see it.
Yep.
Are you proposing to do anything of that to protect our substructure? Or?
More of that. I think there's one that the underwater inspection report noted was missing, so obviously we'd replace that. There's probably some other work that needs to be done below the water line.
According to the underwater inspection that you did not do, there's 2 of them missing.
That's work that would be done, yeah. That's not expensive. It's FRP, it's fiber reinforced plastic.
So now we got plastic protecting our bridge? I guess I don't understand. I can see if you have a solid structure and you put plastic around it to protect it from boat traffic, water, wave action, whatever. I don't understand how that's gonna give us any structural strength to.
Yeah, again, the concrete below that is really doing the work. The FRP around that is really just a protective coating more than anything. There's not a lot of structural value there. It's really just a protective coating. And it's used industry-wide. It's not something that we came up with.
Okay, I'm looking at, yeah, I know you don't have the thing in front of you. Pier 1S, the positioning dowels, okay, you addressed that. What about here where we got a big crack on Pier 1S on the south side? On the same beam, you got positioning dowels missed on one side and the other side is caving in.
Those are types of things that get repaired quite often, yeah. Those would be normal construction methods to fix those, either injecting cracks or replacing spalled concrete.
Additional information that I've received from MDOT. Anyways, the structure of the bridge, anyways, according to their chart, the red line states we do not have a 6-inch concrete top on that bridge, which their projection in their report gives a life expectancy of 35 years on this bridge. And right now we're at 47. And this is directly from MDOT that I received. So by doing a lot of this work, my concern is if MDOT is saying that this bridge only had a life expectancy of 35 years, give or take, without that 6-inch concrete on top. This is something else that has just recently been shared. I don't think other council members have been aware of this, so it's just another concern.
Yeah, and I understand it. One thing that is based on statistical data. That's
Correct.
Obviously not specific to your bridge. Our ideas are specific to your
Right,
bridge, what
but-
we're actually seeing.
But what that reference is, this design bridge, the design of this bridge, minusing, subtracting out that 6-inch concrete on top, definitely has an effect on the longevity of that life of the bridge.
Certainly.
And right now, I believe this is the first time that this has been shared out with anybody to consider.
Yes.
So.
And you've seen that. You've seen that your 1982 bridge is failing prematurely.
72.
72, sorry.
Sure.
Without that concrete deck to, shed the water off and protect the beams, the water goes down through the beams and causes the things that you're seeing. Things that, some of which can be repaired, some of which is capacity that's just gone.
Integrity of it, correct. Any
Mayor?
other, yes.
Help me understand something. If something has a life expectancy and it exceeds that life expectancy, how can we expect it to be, or to live longer than its expectancy? I'm merely going by the information that we have. We know the age of the bridge. We know it had a lifespan. It's exceeded that lifespan. It's had 2 major remodels, or 2 major redos in its lifetime, premature. The first one was premature. It was failing quicker than they had anticipated. We have piers underneath. I mean, I'm a contractor. I think in a certain way. When you have a failing foundation, or one that's certainly not in its prime, you don't throw more weight and more tonnage on that failing foundation, in my mind. Now, I'm not an engineer, and I'm simply asking. Help me understand why we would take and put more money into a bridge whose infrastructure, its foundation, is deteriorating. And I mean, I'm hearing some pretty bold numbers here. 15 to 20 years beyond what we already got out of this bridge, just by putting a few repairs and some surface over the top. I'm struggling with understanding how we can achieve that. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I think characterizing the piers as failing, I wouldn't characterize them that way. None of the previous inspectors have either. I mean, they've been rated as fair condition. And there are bridges all across the state who have a new superstructure, a brand new superstructure, far more of an investment than what we're talking about, put on abutments and piers that are in fair condition. That's
not unusual?
That is not unusual by any means. No, I've done it personally a number of times. So that isn't unusual. The other thing is life expectancy. I inspect bridges that have been in the ground for 100+ years. Life expectancy is going to be, you know, one measure, but for an asset like this, for a piece of infrastructure, it's not like for a piece of electronics or something like that, where, you know, it has a defined failure point, something that you're not going to fix. This is assets that you manage, and you try and spread that original, say, 50-year lifespan, try and get it as much out of it as you can. That's what we're advocating.
Well, and that's what we've been doing. We've been stretching and stretching the use of this bridge for the last, well, when was the first time we redid the deck, Roger? 85. That was 12 years after it was built. Okay.
It was redone in '89 and 2008.
Okay. All right.
I'll say that asphalt design, a normal design when we design a road, or taking bridges out of the equation, asphalt has a 20-year design life. When you put it in a situation like this, that shrinks dramatically. We weren't surprised at all when we saw that, you know, you replaced it after 10 years. That's normal for this type of bridge, because it's not a good detail.
Craig, was the original bridge deck concrete, or was that always asphalt?
I believe it was asphalt.
It's always been asphalt. Okay. And your proposal is to put 6 inches of concrete over the top of that?
Thickness to be determined, but something like that, 4, 6.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah.
4 to 6 inches as opposed to 2 inches of.
Right.
And the concrete, and I'm only asking to try and understand, but the concrete would be over the top of the box beams. Would there be a membrane in between, like the asphalt is, or is the concrete itself what sheds the water?
We would remove the membrane as best as what you can, and then try and get as much bond between the two as we can. Again, to shed the water off.
So the concrete is acting as the membrane.
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, what we would, well, at least under the composite option, we see a lot of value in trying to get that new concrete that we're adding to be structural in nature, to help bridge those box beams that are, you know, we've lost some strands that can't get put back.
A composite, what do you?
Composite, non-composite is what's happening right now. The asphalt is just riding on top of the beams. It's not doing any structural good whatsoever. Composite is when we take and we physically connect our new concrete to the concrete that's there, so that they're acting together, so that we're taking a 21-inch beam and making it something like 27 inches.
Okay, so we're going to pour the concrete, and we're going to try and tie the concrete directly to the box beams.
That's under the composite option. There's a non-composite option where basically instead of doing an asphalt overlay, you just do a concrete overlay, and you don't connect them. You just use that as your wearing surface instead. Again, that was a reaction to how do we bridge over these box beams that we're worried about a tire falling into. Concrete does a better job of that than asphalt does.
Okay, thank you.
Is he going to continue on it after we're done with our little question and answer session here? Or is this it?
Whatever he'd like to do. I mean, he's
paying him. He can come up
presenting.
Well, I wasn't sure if you were just doing your initial comments, and then we had some questions, and then you were going to go into a full-blown presentation, like you did last time.
No, our presentation was what was on the screen.
Very good.
Yep.
Okay. Pat, just to reiterate about that composite construction, and people are complaining or having some concerns about the additional weight if we were to add 4 inches or 6 inches of concrete on top of the concrete. box beams that we have now. One of the reasons that you would do that and tie the new concrete in with the old concrete is because it's going to be able to potentially even increase the load capacity of the bridge by spanning or spreading the load out amongst a whole bunch of beams. So if we have one beam that's worse than another, let's say with a couple of the wire pieces broke underneath, because we're not concerned so much about the strength. The top of the box beam does not add any strength. It's all the bottom of the box beam, correct?
I would say it doesn't have none, but the bottom of the box beam is doing the real work.
80-20 or whatever the old 80-20 rule. And so hopefully by adding new concrete on top, we can spread that load across many of the box beams. Okay?
The other point maybe I glossed over is that we're not presenting any of this as a completely thought out idea. We're presenting these as ideas that would need to be analyzed and vetted, and you'd need to analyze the piers, say. Can we put an additional 6 inches of concrete on them, and will they still function? That's all work that would be done. It's not part of an inspection by any means, but we're trying to give you some ideas if you're interested in opening up the bridge.
Okay, go ahead.
We're taking turns, right? Go ahead.
Well, actually, I was to the point of coming up with a few options, but continue on with the questions.
Well, I think it would be only fair that we each get our
Certainly.
individual turns. In terms of the piers, the concrete, people are looking at the staining, the rust staining, or the staining all over the bridge in different spots where the concrete water has come through and is leaching out rust. How does that really affect the overall strength of what's actually providing the strength to the bridge? Let's say for the piers that are going down into the water, when I see rust on the outside of the concrete, is it the concrete that's providing me my strength, or is it the steel that's inside?
The steel H-piles that are inside those columns are what's carrying the load.
Okay.
So what we're seeing is where you do see the reinforcing steel, you'll
Yep.
see the grid pattern.
Yep.
Basically what has happened is the water has gotten to that layer of reinforcing steel, started to corrode it where it expands, and then it pops the concrete off. If we were expecting to see significant damage to the steel H-piles inside, you would see the next layer of concrete popping off, because right now it's confined.
Because essentially if you were to take a look and do a cross-section of that concrete pier, you'd have an H-pile in the middle of it, shaped in the letter H, and then a rebar cage that's quite close to the surface.
Right.
And so all we're seeing is that light rebar cage potentially leaching out.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. If we were to go through with these repairs, what would be our time frame before, as the point the other councilman was making about, geez, we've got these areas where we're seeing exposed steel strands, or in the pier caps where we're seeing the dowels that are exposed, and you're saying we could go in and pour concrete or maybe even inject into cracks. How long would that last? Are you saying that potentially could last for the 15 or 20 year additional life cycle? Or are we going to be down this same road another 5 years from now?
Yeah, whatever you do is going to need maintenance, certainly. It's not going to be something that you walk away from for 15 years.
Okay.
But what we would do is we would try to design the repairs to the substructure to kind of match whatever we're doing up top, so that that's not failing before the money that we're putting up top is getting what we think we need to get out of it.
I didn't have anything else.
You didn't?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
No.
Thanks, John, for coming. I do have a question. Do you have a less evasive or non-destructive testing option? And what would that entail? Or are you recommending semi-destructive because you have to get down and see what's under there?
Yeah, and I even hesitate to call this, to use the word destructive in what we're proposing here, because the only thing you're destructing is cold patch, basically hot patch. There would be a little bit potentially of damage done to the beams themselves if we find a rough surface. They need a smooth surface to test, so they said what they would do is take a hand grinder, just smooth out an area. It's not changing the capacity or the function of that beam at all, but it does give them a surface where they can do their testing. They thought they needed like a 3-inch to maybe 6-inch diameter area to work in. But yeah, that's about as least invasive as what I can think of, at least, to get to those box beams.
You're talking about the box beams, and the superstructure rating ranges from 0 to 9, with 9 being new. And what this is from MDOT is saying that our box beams are a rating of 3, which is serious. So I'm kind of conflicted here with what you're saying and what reports that are coming in are saying. And you're still saying we're going to have to throw money at this continually, even if the bridge could be repaired, which we don't know yet. Right. Correct? Mm-hmm. If it is repairable, what kind of insurance is the city going to get as far as liability? Is it going to be back on the taxpayers of the city, or is it going to be on you? What kind of guarantee is the city going to have? The insurance of failure if this does fail. Again, the taxpayers have thrown money at this for a long time. I'm a taxpayer. I don't want any more of my money being thrown at this bridge if it's just going to be cost. We can allocate that money for other means within the city. $1 million is a lot of money. $13 million is an absorbent amount of money.
Sure.
You know, this can go to repair all the roads in the city. Instead of one thing, we can do a whole city. You know what I mean? So I struggle with this.
Oh yeah, yeah. Every piece of infrastructure you manage has risk, whether it's a sidewalk outside that somebody could trip on, or it's the water main down the street that could break at any time. Bridges are inherently more risky because there's even higher health and safety risks. But risk is managed by doing what you're doing, inspecting it more often, making repairs, things like that. I don't know that your bridge is any more risky than any other sick bridge around the state, and there are lots of them.
They continue to fall down.
Well, we've had very few collapses.
But they do collapse.
They do.
They do collapse, and it's not fun when it happens. It's a terrible thing.
Yeah, the other part of your question was about maintenance, and regardless of whether you do a repair option or a replacement option, you're going to have maintenance. A replacement option obviously has less maintenance, at least initially, but there's obviously cost savings in there to pay for that and to do that. But I don't want to give you the impression that either option is maintenance free, because I was just at the Southwest Region meeting today, and they just approved $200,000 to repair a couple of bridges that were built, I think, 5 years ago. So it's an expensive piece of infrastructure.
As far as weight limits, we have reduced the weight limits on Smith's Bridge, and they were ignored. The police can't be there 24/7 to monitor who comes over that bridge.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And it gets more critical as you get lower and lower and lower, because less, truckers know what they're carrying, up at the top of the scale. But down at the bottom of the scale, people generally know that my car weighs less than a ton, but I have no idea. And then somewhere in the middle is where you're trying to reach the UPS drivers, the garbage haulers, things like that.
And just to be clear, the people that want the bridge open is one group. There is another group out there, and I've talked with many, that want it closed. They're enjoying the 50-mile-per-hour cars going in a 35-mile-per-hour road is no longer there. It's quieter on West Spring Lake Road and on 168th. I have a list of things, that we're taxed too much. It's too much money for this city, for 3,000 people to pay for a bridge. And the bridge, you have this bridge, it's just so much money. I mean, it's incredible. And even if it was a brand new bridge, we're looking 30 years down the road, it's gonna have to be replaced again.
You're gonna be in the same spot.
It's just an insane amount of money for a small town like this. And like Mr. Ross pointed out when he compared it with the cost of a car, nobody can afford it. Without help, we cannot afford this bridge.
Yeah, I can't speak to the issue of closure really, because that's a local policy decision by all means. What I will say is that I think it had about 6,000 vehicles a day on it before it was closed, if I remember my numbers right. That means it was being used, it served a purpose, it was built for a reason. There's a lot of communities facing this exact same thing. You know, do we let roads go to gravel? Do we, you know, cul-de-sac our bridges? That's a hot topic. How do we keep getting more out of this infrastructure that we haven't funded?
I had to go to an MPO meeting, so it was interesting and very informative.
Yep.
So, okay, I'll yield to my other colleague here.
Thank you. There's three principal purposes for the city council to exist. One is the health of the citizens, the well-being of the citizens, and the safety of the citizens. And I see this as a safety issue. I'm a firefighter EMT. I've had 38 years of experience, and I've also gone through collapse rescue training. I've seen what happens when buildings collapse, and it's not pretty. And we've all seen it on the news. And primarily the collapse has to do with the supporting structures, sometimes the superstructure, but primarily the substructures. And you have not addressed that at more than what has been previously presented to the council. And we went from, okay, well, we can repair this, and we can repair this. We're adding money on top of money on top of money on top of money. This council has we have been presented with these options before. There's nothing new, and we're trying to be proactive. We don't want to be that community that ends up on the evening news where it says our bridge collapsed. If we put another 2 inches of, or we put 2 inches of concrete on there, yeah, we might work. But you said the piers were in fair condition. No, the report says they were in poor condition, and that was 2 years ago. And they went from fair to poor in 2 years.
Yeah,
and and that was 2 years ago. What has happened since then? They didn't get better. I know that. They've continued to deteriorate, and only a fool builds on a weak foundation. So we would have to definitely address repairing those piers. And right there, you go from $1.5 million to $2 million, maybe $3 million. You know, the price keeps going up. And then we have to do the maintenance on top of this. This city can't absorb that. We don't have the funds. The tax base isn't there. You know, how do you justify repairing the superstructure, but just doing basically cosmetic on the substructure?
I apologize. I should have clarified on the piers. Everything but that area where we would be repairing as part of the project is rated as fair condition. The underwater inspection in 2017 rated everything below the water as fair, a 5. You're right, it hasn't gotten better, but based on experience, I don't think it's gotten a whole lot worse either. That's another thing that you could justify in your minds is do another underwater inspection. It's not due for another 3 years. You could do one early if that was a concern that something had changed dramatically in 2 years. Cosmetic, again, I don't want to characterize anything that we would be doing as cosmetic. The problems may be cosmetic. The repairs would be a solid structural patch, something of that nature. Not just window dressing, but we'd be trying to restore concrete health.
Just 1 inch of concrete, that's a lot of weight.
Sure.
And if we increase it to what is needed, can those piers withstand that for the 15 to 20 years that you've predicted?
Yeah, again, that's something that you'd need to vet out. This is an idea for further discussion right now. This isn't something that's been designed and on paper. But you'd need to look at it. Certainly that one area would need to be repaired, and some of the jackets would want to be repaired to keep them protecting the piles inside.
I have one more question. What would the load limit be with, say, an additional 4 inches of concrete? What would our bridge be limited to?
It's not something I can answer off the cuff. It's something that would need to be analyzed as part of a design. But what I will say is that, again, the beams were just analyzed earlier this year, and they came up with a 30-ton load rating. It was posted at 20 tons. They came up with a 30-ton limit. If we were to do some kind of a structural overlay, I would hope to get it back close to that.
To 30 ton?
To that 20 to 30 ton, you know, try and get back what was there. Your main, what we would want to do, because it's a risky thing, and obviously, you know, the 7 of you are very concerned with it, rightly so. We would want to do is try and post it to what is your actual use of this bridge. We don't want to post it for the one trucker that gets lost and wants to use your bridge. We want to post it for what is the DPW doing with snow plowing? What are the schools doing? So that's where we would set that load limit. The other thing you can do is set a lower load limit, and except for emergency vehicles, maintenance vehicles, things like that. That gives you a little bit more protection, again, because the average person driving around in a garbage truck might not know what they actually weigh. Most of them do, but it only takes one.
Tonight, there's a couple options that we can do. Either voting to, thank you very much, you guys. Voting to direct staff to send RFPs for bids to be considered for further testing of Smith's Bridge. Table the discussion for further testing of Smith's Bridge following the November election. Don't know on that one. Or options to do nothing and wait for future grants.
Your Honor.
Yes.
Up to this point in the last all the years that we've been working on this project, we have done due diligence on doing everything we can to keep this bridge open. I think that at this point in time, the relatively small amount of money for the testing, I would like to make a motion at this time that the bridge remain closed until such time that testing can be done and the bridge can be repaired or replaced in a manner that it guarantees the safety of those who transit it, and that council direct staff to send RFP for testing to Smith's Bridge.
Support. It's a motion to support further discussion regarding this.
Essentially what you're saying is to go ahead, and we're going to be setting a request for quote out for essentially what Fleiss and Vandenbrink is suggesting, which is additional testing.
Right.
Is that correct?
So we can put that with the rest of our material, and if we have, it has to stay closed.
But keeping the bridge closed.
Yes,
So
definitely.
keeping the bridge closed, what I have is keeping the bridge closed.
Until such time.
Further testing, and the council is to direct staff for an RFP bids.
Yes.
Okay.
So you want an RFP for semi-destructive testing on 6 areas of asphalt, or 6 areas on the bridge, 10 areas on the bridge?
Whatever the engineering firms think would be acceptable.
I think we have to specify the number, so each engineering firm is bidding on the same thing.
Why don't you guys jump up and give us a direction here? How many spots do you think we ought to test it?
In the proposal we put in front of you tonight, we included six locations approximately. We had our testing firm on site for about a half a day. It depends how, coordination with DPW, things like
Before I
that.
give you any money, I'm gonna know for sure that thing's good. So do we need 2, 4, 8, 30?
You tell us what is your comfort level. I'm thinking
You're-
6 would make me comfortable. If the DPW goes out and picks the 6 worst spots, that would make me comfortable giving you a recommendation, is the thought process I used. And thinking through what can a testing firm, physically do, working behind the DPW.
Honor, can't we leave this up to city staff along with Director of Public Works? That's what the engineer had suggested previously in his presentation, was for city staff to pick out the worst areas. If there's more than 6 worst areas, then do the RFQ for that.
City staff would direct.
We'll come up with a number.
Okay, thank you.
Craig, what kind of time frame do you think it might take to develop something like that on the city's end?
We can get something drafted this week, yeah.
Okay.
Would it be available for consideration at our next council meeting on October 17th?
I want to give each company a couple weeks to look at it.
So that there's a timeline in place?
So it'll probably be November 4th.
Okay. Some people would have that information. Oh, in addition, I received multiple letter emails from residents. I received 15 of them. Some of them were duplicates regarding asking council to consider testing. I received 2 regarding tearing the bridge down. That would be the most feasible for the city. And then I have one that had just some other concerns, but I'd like to enter these into the record, please. I'll give them to you afterwards. Okay, so there's a motion.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to our next agenda item. 7B, discussion take action if appropriate to approve the bid from Bill Brolink Landscaping and Irrigation for $30,568.75 for City Hall outside grounds for improvements. Thank you.
Motion, Your Honor.
Sure.
I'll make a motion, we approve bid from Bill Brolick Landscaping.
Support. Okay. There's motion and support. Further discussion regarding this?
I noticed, I'm sorry, Your Honor.
No.
Excuse me, wait a minute.
Wait.
Excuse me.
Our meeting is still in session.
Yes. Can you save the conversation for outside, please? Thank you. Because I can't hear what's going on down there. Okay, Pat.
Between these 2 bids, I'm not seeing apples to apples here. Somebody's got more square footage and cubic yards and whatnot. How did we get to the point where one is obviously seeing something more than the other did?
Both companies were here, both inspected the site, both came back and measured, and this was the measurements they came up with. Right, the Bill Brolick, he added some add-ons, additional irrigation out there by the boulevard and between the street. He's suggesting we put a stone in instead of a bark. He feels it'd be less maintenance. He's a little higher on the amount of concrete, and he's higher for the topsoil and hydroseed. He has an additional charge in there for the lawn prep. I think the main goal of council was to get a lawn in over there by the daycare. I think either one would do what city council directed staff to get. If city council is satisfied with the bill or proposal from city farmer, staff have no objection to that either.
Well, I'm reluctant to vote for something that's $10,000 more, and they're giving us some things that we didn't even ask for. City farmer I mean, these bids should be identical, or at least the scope of work should be identical. And yet, somebody's thrown on more work here and raised the price. Why are we agreeing to do that when they're not quoting the same thing?
Bill Brolick, his recommendations would it be less maintenance in the long run for the city if we had the stone in there instead of the bark.
I understand that. Then why aren't we asking the city farmer to bid it to what they're doing so that we can see comparative bids? This isn't comparative.
We can do that.
I would appreciate that.
Quick question, Craig. During our earlier discussions, we were talking about running some underground out to the,
Community garden?
yeah, the garden. Was that I saw that was included with Brolick's. Was it included with the other one?
We would do a 2-inch tap and the DPW would run the line to the garden.
Okay.
So understanding Councilmember Twag, you'd like to staff?
Correct.
So we're comparing apples to apples or comparing similar bids?
Correct.
Okay. Is that the consensus of council before we direct staff?
I'd be in agreement with that.
You'd be? Okay.
Will
Everybody?
withdraw my motion then.
Okay. So with that being said, then we'll look at this issue at a future date.
So move to table it?
Yes. A motion to table?
I'll second.
Okay, there you go. All right, all those in favor stating aye?
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Moving down to item 7C, discussion take action if appropriate to schedule a work session as a regular agenda item on October 21. Is there anything that council would like to see added to a work session for October 21?
Your Honor? Just questions for Craig. We're looking at this,
We're not there yet. Let's see. Is there anything that you want to have added to our next council meeting?
yeah. We got 2 water main extensions here, right? One's on the agenda and one's not. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
One was just for information.
Okay, can we put this, the options from Spar to Livonia on the work session?
I'm sorry?
The, going under the river, or the Smith's Bio there from Spar to Livonia.
Oh, yeah.
That was proposed several times. It's been tabled a couple times. We get a little more information on that and work on that at the work session. That would be the only thing I would want.
Your Honor, we did talk about the monitoring wells that were in William Ferry Park.
Correct.
Is that something that is worthy of discussing?
Yes, I believe so. So put.
Okay. Okay.
So Thursday?
Yep, just want to make
Okay.
sure it wasn't skipped over.
No, right here, ready to
Okay.
go. Okay, so William Ferry Park, the monitoring wells, and the water main. All right. Anything else? There's a couple of them that we can discuss. All right, staff has directions then?
Yep, all
Moving
set.
forward?
Thank you.
Okay. Moving down to 7D, work session, Second Street Water Main Extension.
So in your packet, some information prepared by the city engineer for extending the water main. Right now, if you look at the drawings, there's option 1, option 2, and option 3. Looking at option 2 first, the green line that's coming down from between Carmen to 2nd Street, there's a blue line in there, the existing water main, and it ends at 2nd Street. The green line shown across from east to west is going to be put in by the developer. So if you go back to option 1, what the city's proposing is we would extend the water main from the end of 2nd Street to the end of Maple, and then run it up to where the developer is putting the hydrant in on Verplank Street. This is something that has been recommended in the city's water reliability study. And since the developer is doing this water main across a Verplank parcel, we thought it'd be a good time to city to eliminate a dead end in the city. So in your packet also, the city engineer prepares some cost estimates to do that. City's cost would probably be about $150,000 That's something that has not been budgeted. The city water fund can handle that cost at this time. The caveat is that earlier, a couple months back, we talked about the water meter. Our water meters are obsolete and need to be replaced. Public Works Supervisor is working on getting some more information for City Council. We'll bring that to you shortly, but that's going to be another expense that's going to be added to the water fund. That's going to be a major cost.
Your Honor?
Yes.
Craig, refresh my memory, weren't they gonna upgrade the water main down Carmen?
If we replace the pavement, we were going to do that water main at that time.
So how does that fit into this?
It doesn't. That's a separate project. It's a 6-inch water main going down Carmen Drive right now. The thought was when we repaved Carmen Drive and tore that street up, we would replace that 6-inch with an 8-inch.
And I think my question was, for what purpose?
Just get additional pressure down there.
So this line you're proposing is not gonna tie into the other end of that 6-inch? I thought that was our.
It's coming off that 6-inch now, or 8-inch.
So we're gonna have a dead head there again?
No, the water main does go all the way down into Carmen to the west. It serves all those businesses down there.
I'm confused. Not the first time tonight, but I thought it. All right. So we're coming down over Plank. Oh, we're gonna tie the line for Planks, or what would that be, Bill's Plumbing, to Verplank Drive, correct?
Right, so there's that blue line on option 2.
Yep.
That's existing. That's already there.
I'm on the wrong option. Okay, I'm on the right page with you.
North and south, that blue line is existing.
Okay.
You see, it's on 2nd Street, the existing water main. And if you look, it stops at the end, the existing water main stops at the south end on 2nd Street there, and then it picks up again on Maple Street. So between, basically from Bill's Plumbing to Maple Street, there's no water main. He's running it across his property from east to west, from Bill's property to Verplank Street.
And then the city's gonna pick up from Verplank.
From where they're, right.
I was on the wrong. Okay. So option 2 is the 230 million, or 230,000?
No, it's about 150,000.
That's something the city's been wanting to do for a while.
It's been something that's been recommended the city do for a while. They're adding a hydrant at the end of Verplank Street there. Right in the middle there.
From a water source from a fire standpoint, the option 1 I think would be the best because it has the least amount of bends in it. The more bends you put in the pipes, the less water pressure you can get. My choice would be option.
I don't know about the balance, but it makes sense.
That's, yeah, it looks like that's what the engineer
And
recommended.
also, dead end height, or dead end water line.
We discuss it with the church.
That prefers option 1. So this is just get some feedback from city council, if you direct staff to pursue this further, get some better cost estimates, move forward with this project.
Option 1, correct?
I'm sure.
Yep.
That's the consent. Yep. Okay.
If that's what Matt is recommending, that's what we're gonna do.
Craig, how long before we'll have an idea as to what's going on with the meters?
I was hoping to have it to you this week, hopefully at the next meeting.
Okay. Anything else around the water meters before we move on? Nope. Okay, we're down to public comments. Any additional public comments at this time? Nope. Okay, hearing none. City manager.
No report?
Okay, Councilmember Belize.
I just want to comment, the Fire Barn Park new playground equipment looks great. I want to thank everyone who volunteered their time, money, input. That's all I have.
Okay, great. Mayor Pro Tem O'Donnell.
Yeah, the park looks nice. On the 20th of September, I attended a meeting in Lansing with the Transportation Infrastructure and Technical Committee's advisory through the Michigan Municipal League. For those of you who don't know, this is a advisory committee made up of representatives from cities around the state of Michigan, such as council members, mayors, and other representatives. Very important that we have this representation because, especially right now, the state legislature is trying to take away local control over a lot of different issues. The committee voted on either no position, support, oppose, table, or support in concept. We had talked about 32 different bills before the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. 5 were no position, 8 were support, 8 opposed, 1 tabled, and 5 support in concept. Also, we discussed the transportation budget, and state budget, and the city of Ferrysburg is well known to this committee, and I was told by the have our backs, and they are trying to help us with the bridge situation. So the representation we have is very important. MPO, MML. Also on the September 25th and through the 27th, I attended the convention down in Detroit with MML. I was a voting delegate on the Board of Trustees, and we, at that time, set up our goals for the coming year. Lots of good information, lots of good networking. I have gotten to meet with department heads from the DNR, DEQ, a lot of the other alphabet departments, and a lot of good information, and I think also a good representation for the city of Ferrysburg. We were very well known down there.
Congratulations to our mayor for being elected vice president. That's good. It just puts Ferrysburg further on the map and further noticed. Also want to thank all the volunteers that showed up to put together the new Fire Barn Park. I got to work on it for 2 days. It was fun, and then I took some pictures. I did post it onto social media. I now am on Ferrysburg Informed. So that was fun, and it was fun getting the feedback. I want to wish Mary Jane, who's in our office, she will be retiring November 11th. So she's been here with us a long time. Happy retirement. Good luck to her. I got a bunch of stuff here. Then I got to take Craig's place, and it's a very honor to do that. I've only been on council, let's say, 8 years, and I got to substitute for Craig one time at the MPO. Learned a lot. It was very informative, and we need to be involved in the MPO. We were not at the table for 2 years. You can look this up online. We are now on their radar. Smith's Bridge is right there. It's on the bottom, but we're on the radar. So I'm hoping, I also miss the bridge. I live on the east side of the bridge, but I don't mind going around either for safety. And I just want to say to any candidates that are running, don't tie yourself into one agenda. You have to, when you sit up here, you should take somewhat of a unbiased decision-making when you sit up here. You can't be in a special interest group. You should try to be as bipartisan as possible, because you're responsible for everybody that lives in this community, not just a group or a special interest group or a special area of Ferrysburg. And it's very important. I just wanted to share that. And then lastly, the Beautification Committee will be doing the Monster Bash on October 25th from 6 to 8. End of report.
I'd like to express my personal thanks to Jim Lilly and Roger Victory for their efforts in getting us funding for the bridge. Don't know where it's going to go from here, but they worked extremely hard to get it in proposed budget, and I just think that I'd just like to say thank you to them for that. That's it.
Thanks. Councilmember Todd.
No report.
Councilmember.
No report.
KLH? No KLH?
That's the next week.
Okay, all right. Just want to thank everybody again for the Ferrysburg Fire Department, the Fire Barn Park. It was fabulous. It was great community involvement. We even brought in people from businesses and from other municipalities, so it was really neat to get to meet different people.
And the mayor was out there working too.
Earlier this week on Monday, I received communication from the governor's office to participate in a conference call regarding the budget. And I reached out to Mr. Bessinger, so he and I both participated in that conference call. At the end of the conference call, we were still holding hope that we would get some funding, but as it turned out, it didn't. We were not successful. I want to thank the support that the community gave for the Smith's Bayou Chili Cook-Off. 2 weeks ago, we presented a $7,100 check to 4 Points. So it was a pretty phenomenal turnout of community support there also. And then also, Mary Jane, congratulations on the retirement November 11, and a special thank you to Representative Lilly and Senator Victory for doing due diligence this past year, trying to support our community and also representing this Northwest Ottawa County. So
A lot of work went into that.
yes, it definitely did. That's all I have.
Motion to adjourn.
Who fights for this one?
How many times?
3 more.
Once.
Oh, yes, I did. I forget. I have that. Because I've been asked to speak.
Remember, you only have one more.
Pardon me? Are you going to be there? Yeah. Okay. You guys don't. So I can get Jack back there. Right.
Oh, I didn't
All
even,
right.
I didn't even
Awesome.
get